On Friday the 13th, while most of Europe slept peacefully beneath the cold autumn sky, something terrifying was already unfolding. Across France, royal soldiers moved silently through dark streets, carrying sealed orders from the king himself. Black horses thundered across muddy roads. Church bells echoed through sleeping towns. Torches flickered against stone walls. And before sunrise, thousands of men would be hunted. Not thieves, not murderers, not enemy armies, but the most powerful brotherhood in medieval Europe, the Knights Templar. For nearly 2 centuries, they had fought in holy wars, guarded sacred relics, built enormous wealth, and risen higher than almost anyone believed possible. Kings trusted them, popes protected them, armies feared them, but power creates enemies, and somewhere behind palace walls, a king had already decided the Templars could no longer be allowed to exist. By the end of that day, the order would collapse into chaos, its leaders imprisoned, its members tortured, its secrets scattered into legend. And according to some historians, the fear surrounding Friday the 13th may have begun with their destruction. But how did the greatest military order in Christendom fall almost overnight? Why did Europe suddenly turn against men once celebrated as holy warriors? And what happened to the treasure that vanished before the arrest began? Tonight, we uncover the day the Templars vanished. Then to understand the destruction of the Templars, you first have to understand the world that created them. The medieval world was violent. Empires clashed constantly. Religious wars consumed entire regions. And at the center of it all stood Jerusalem. For Christians across Europe, Jerusalem was more than a city. It was sacred ground, the heart of their faith. And after the First Crusade captured the city in 1099, thousands of Christian pilgrims began traveling across dangerous territories to reach the Holy Land. Many never arrived. Bandits attacked travelers along isolated roads. Raiding parties ambushed caravans. Pilgrims were robbed, kidnapped, and slaughtered in the desert. The roads to Jerusalem became graveyards. Then around the year 1119, a small group of French knights formed a brotherhood unlike anything Europe had ever seen. They would live as monks, but fight as soldiers. They took vows of poverty, obedience, and chastity. Yet these men were not peaceful monks hidden inside monasteries. They trained for war. They rode into battle. And they believed dying in combat for their faith guaranteed salvation. The order became known as the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. Eventually, the world shortened the name, the Knights Templar. At first, they possessed almost nothing. Their famous seal showed 2 knights riding a single horse, a symbol of their poverty. But poverty would not last long, because Europe became fascinated by them. Warrior monks seemed almost mythical, holy men carrying swords, guardians chosen by God himself. Soon, wealthy nobles began donating land, gold, weapons, and castles to the order. The church granted them extraordinary privileges. The Templars answered only to the Pope. No king could command them. No local lord could tax them. No bishop could interfere with their affairs. It was an unbelievable amount of freedom, and over time, that freedom became power. Across the battlefields of the Crusades, the Templars earned a terrifying reputation. Unlike many medieval armies, they were disciplined, extremely disciplined. Retreat without permission was forbidden. Cowardice was disgraceful. Their rules demanded absolute obedience. And in battle, that discipline made them deadly. When other forces broke apart in chaos, the Templars often held the line. Their heavy cavalry charges became legendary. Armored knights thundered across open ground with enormous force, crashing into enemy formations like steel storms. To medieval soldiers, the sight alone was terrifying. Some Muslim chroniclers described the Templars as fearless men who seemed almost eager to die, because in many ways, they were. To the Templars, death in battle was not failure, it was martyrdom, and that belief made them extraordinarily dangerous. Stories about them spread throughout Europe. Tales of impossible battles, last stands, sacrifices, victories against overwhelming odds. But while the world admired them as warriors, something even more important was happening behind the scenes. The Templars were becoming rich, very rich, and not simply through war. As the order expanded, the Templars built a massive network stretching across Europe and the Middle East. They owned farmland, ports, fortresses, churches, mills, vineyards, entire fleets of ships. But their most revolutionary achievement had nothing to do with swords. It was finance. Travel during the Middle Ages was dangerous. Pilgrims carrying gold were easy targets for thieves. The Templars solved the problem. A traveler could deposit money with the order in Europe, receive coded documents, then withdraw funds safely in another city hundreds of miles away. It was one of the earliest forms of international banking, and it transformed the order into an economic giant. Kings borrowed from them. Nobles stored wealth with them. Merchants trusted them. Some historians even compare the Templars to a medieval global corporation. Their influence spread everywhere, and with wealth came secrecy. Templar fortresses became mysterious places. Ordinary people rarely understood what occurred inside them. Private ceremonies fueled rumors. Whispers spread across Europe. Some claimed the order possessed sacred relics. Others believed they had uncovered hidden knowledge beneath Temple Mount during their years in the Holy Land. No one knew what was true, but mystery creates fear, and the more powerful the Templars became, the more dangerous they appeared, especially to one man. Philip IV of France was not a weak ruler. He was intelligent, ambitious, and deeply obsessed with royal authority, but his kingdom faced enormous problems. Wars had drained the treasury, taxes angered the population, and the crown was drowning in debt. Much of that debt belonged to the Templars. The king depended on them financially, and dependence humiliated him, because despite wearing the crown, Philip could not fully control the most powerful organization inside his own kingdom. The Templars answered to the Pope, not the throne. They possessed castles, money, military experience, international influence. To Philip, they looked less like monks and more like a state within a state. Then the rumors began reaching the king more frequently. Secret rituals, forbidden ceremonies, heretical practices, strange initiations. Some accused the order of spitting on crosses during secret rites. Others claimed they worshipped hidden idols. Modern historians debate these accusations heavily. Many believe the charges were fabricated or exaggerated, but truth no longer mattered. Philip had discovered the perfect weapon: fear. If he could convince Europe that the Templars were enemies of the faith, he could destroy them legally, erase his debts, and seize their enormous wealth. So secretly, the king began preparing one of the largest coordinated arrests in medieval history. On October 13th, 1307, the operation began. Royal officials across France received sealed letters bearing the king's orders. They were told not to open them until the same exact moment. Secrecy was everything. If even a few Templars escaped, the entire plan could fail. Before dawn, messengers rode through the darkness. Rain hammered rooftops. Cold wind swept across silent villages and inside fortresses throughout France. The Templars slept completely unaware that their world was about to end. Then the orders were opened. Arrest them all. At sunrise, royal soldiers stormed Templar commanderies across the kingdom. Doors were smashed open. Sleeping knights were dragged from their beds. Church halls echoed with screams and pounding boots. Some Templars reached for weapons, but resistance was almost impossible. The arrests happened too quickly, too suddenly. Thousands were captured within hours. Among them was the Grand Master himself, Jacques de Molay. Just one day earlier, he had attended a royal funeral in Paris. He likely believed the order remained protected by its influence and reputation. Instead, he now found himself chained as a prisoner of the French crown. The accusations were shocking: heresy, blasphemy, corruption, devil worship. Royal officials claimed the Templars denied Christ during initiation ceremonies, that they spat upon crosses, that they practiced obscene rituals in secret chambers hidden from the public. To ordinary medieval Christians, these accusations were horrifying, and Philip understood exactly what he was doing. Fear spreads faster than truth, especially when backed by the authority of both crown and church. Then came the interrogations. Prison cells filled across France. Many Templars were tortured for confessions. Some were stretched on the rack. Others were starved, beaten, burned, and under unbearable pain. Confessions began to appear. Men admitted to crimes historians still debate centuries later. But torture can force almost anyone to say anything. Even so, the damage was done. The image of the holy warrior had shattered. Across Europe, shock turned into suspicion. Some rulers refused to believe the accusations. Others quickly moved against the order inside their own kingdoms. The Pope himself hesitated at first, but Philip pressured him relentlessly. The king wanted total destruction, not merely arrests, not investigations, erasure. And as prison cells filled across France, the most powerful brotherhood in Europe collapsed almost overnight. Men once feared on the battlefield now waited in chains beneath stone fortresses. Their allies disappeared, their reputations shattered, their future uncertain. But while kings celebrated the fall of the Templars, whispers had already begun spreading through Europe, because something was missing, something important, and no one knew where it had gone. According to several historical accounts, Templar ships disappeared from French ports shortly before the arrests. Some believe surviving members escaped with gold, documents, and sacred relics. Others think secret archives were hidden long before the king acted. And then came the theories. Did the treasure reach Scotland? Was it hidden beneath remote fortresses? Did surviving Templars carry their secrets into underground societies? No one knows. But the disappearance of the treasure changed the story forever. Because now, the fall of the Templars became more than history. It became legend. And legends never die easily. Years passed. Trials continued. Pressure mounted against the order. Eventually, the Pope officially dissolved the Knights Templar. The once mighty brotherhood was destroyed, its lands seized, its members scattered. But one final moment would ensure the Templars were remembered forever. In 1314, Jacques de Molay was taken to Paris for execution. Witnesses expected a broken old man. Instead, they heard defiance. He declared the order innocent. He claimed the confessions were forced, and according to legend, as flames rose around him, he cursed both the king and the Pope. Within a year, both men were dead. To medieval Europe, it felt supernatural. The curse of the Templars entered history, and the legend only grew darker from there. Officially, the Knights Templar vanished in the early 1300s. Their empire collapsed. Their leaders died. Their power disappeared. But their story never truly ended. Because centuries later, people still search for their treasure, still debate their secrets, still wonder what they may have discovered beneath Jerusalem. And perhaps, most strangely of all, the shadow of Friday the 13th still remains. Maybe it is coincidence, maybe it is myth, or maybe somewhere deep within history, the memory of betrayal never faded. Empires are usually destroyed in war. The Templars were destroyed by fear, not conquered by armies, but erased by suspicion, greed, and power. Yet despite everything, the world still remembers them, and perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all. Some orders die, legends do not.